Your very first draft choice when you enter into battle in Squad Busters makes a huge difference for the rest of the match. Picking the right thing goes a long way, and there are 3 units that I think are better than anything else you can choose, and it's not even close. So in this video, we'll review the top common units that you can pick at the start of the draft, and we'll talk a little bit about, hey, what if you had a rare show up or an epic toward the end of the video. But you're very likely to have commons show up, so which ones are the very best? Now, it's important to establish that in this video, of course, there are different game modes that can change the way you think about what you're going to draft. For example, you could have a set going where Mavis and Trader are really good because it's gem overload, so you have to keep in mind what map you're actually playing. But in your typical map, where the objective is primarily just to be battling other players, here are my recommendations for the very best choices. And by the way, I have played my account up to the top 50 ranked globally, so hopefully these ideas carry some weight. Let's go and let's start with the units that I think are actually kind of weak. These are the worst first picks if you're entering into a new map, and that is going to include the Chicken as a very weak choice. Now look, the Chicken is a great mid-game pick, but the very first thing you want is not a Chicken. The damage is too low. You should not actually need that many speed boots at the start, so the Chicken ends up being a really bad choice, as is the El Primo. El Primo does very little damage, and although he has a lot of health, your whole objective at the start is to rapidly grow your squad. He does not do that for you, so he also sits in the weak first choices category. In addition, we've got Bo. Now look, Bo does good PvE damage, but the thing is that he's not going to be great if you bump into an enemy squad. Maybe you won't. Maybe you'll be happy to have a fused Bo, but what I've found is that a low health unit is very risky, and a low health unit that is also low DPS against other players is a liability. So I would not recommend Bo, and in general, I am not looking to draft him into my squad at all. Even in game modes like Mega Mole, I would rather have other things that are high damage in all situations and will crush other players. This brings us to the next category of first choice picks, and that is the suppliers. One of the weakest suppliers that you might consider taking is the Goblin. And if you are in early game lobbies, he's actually very good, but once you get to late game lobbies, there aren't going to be a ton of chests sitting around for you to go and grab. So I found that although he was really good when I was a new player in the game, once I got to the end game, that did not hold true. Similarly, I try to avoid picking a supplier as my first choice. I would much rather go in and pick a combat-ready unit. This means that all of the suppliers, Mavis and Greg, and I will even put the Trader, go into this category of not being ideal first picks. I'm not saying you can't do well with those. I'm saying that for the strategy I like to typically run, which is to be able to fight other players and to be ready if somebody jumps me, they're not what I typically want. There are a ton of situations where, of course, Mavis is very good, Greg is very good, Trader is very good. However, in my perfect world, we're looking at the things that are in the very strong category. And the first one I'm going to put in there that, like, it didn't really belong in weak, it's better than a supplier, so it's gonna go here, but it's not amazing, actually, is going to be the Colt. And the Colt has amazing DPS. This is why he's a good first pick, because you can blast through content, get a ton of coins really fast, and squad up. You need to fuse your Colt very quickly, however, because Colt is very susceptible to getting ambushed. He has low hit points. He is a liability to your squad if you can't get him fused up. Which brings us to the actual top 3. And the number 3 best common that you can start a match with is going to be the Heavy. The Heavy has a lot of health and has a way to recover health. You will notice that in my top 3, every single one of them is going to have a way to fight other players, fight PvE objectives very well, and recover. The downfall of the Heavy is you need to stand still to ramp up his DPS and to do healing. So in situations where it's touch and go and you're on the run, he's not going to be able to perform. And for that reason, I often don't even try to draft him into my squad, which might sound a little weird because he is a top 3 choice, but the other 2 are definitely better. And the problem with a Heavy is that this game seems to be very focused on ambushing other players, knocking out 1 or 2 of their units very quickly, then moving on to something else, or intimidating them such that they run, right? You can't do that with a Heavy. He needs to be stationary, and I find that to be not so amazing in the endgame, but also, look, it's a top 3 starter, in my opinion. Strong combat unit, soaks damage, heals. It's good. Not as good as the Shelly, though. The Shelly gives you a amazing knockback effect. And when she does that knockback, once you get her to 2 stars, she is going to heal. So she is big damage and big heals. She is often what I am picking as my first unit into a draft. I pick the Shelly, go for a blue box, push toward the middle, squad up, move into the middle, blue boxes, and that's the pattern. And she is so good for that. She does enough damage to be super relevant at the start, and at the end, she's healthy enough to not get popped, and she can heal herself. This is extremely valuable. Which brings us to the number 1 common pick, which, okay, there's only one more common left, Chisgule, and that is the Barbarian. The Barbarian is the number 1 pick because not only does he have a way to heal when he flips to Elite, okay, he will heal back up, but he also does the most damage among any common unit in the game. And that is insane. I made a dedicated video about the Barbarian just the other day. I'll have a card in the end screen for that one, but we're not done with this video yet. The point I'm trying to make is that not only does the Barb do a lot of damage, he's got a lot of health, and he's got a way to heal, so you're going to want to fuse early and often anyways. But when you get your second Barb, they flip Elite, he's going to heal. When you get your third Barb, they fuse, he's going to heal. He's super versatile, man. I mean, they call both Shelly and the Barbarian all-rounders, and like, yes, they absolutely fulfill that role. Barbarian is the slam dunk number 1 pick in almost any draft I do if he's available. And of course there's exceptions. Like, for example, if loot goblins are there, you want range damage, I'll pick a Shelly over a Barb. But otherwise, for the most part, I'm gonna slam that Barbarian as a really early choice. Now, there are other choices, and there's a reason I have this best category. Even though this video is about the best common units and ranking all of them, there are some things that, without a question asked, I would pick them above a Barbarian. And I want to talk about those. And it's not just any rare. It's not just any epic that I would pick, by the way. Because what I have found is that I'll start a match with something like a Hog Rider, and you think, hell yeah, I got a Hog Rider right off the rip, let's go. The Hog Rider actually has low health and no way to heal and no way to fuse easily to recover his health. So either you're going to need to draft a healer very quickly, or you're going to find yourself with a health problem on your Hog Rider and he's going to get picked off. That has been my experience. I'm not saying you can't make it work, I'm not saying Hog Rider's bad. We're talking about the first pick you make probably shouldn't be a Hog Rider, okay? But what should it be? If it's going to be a rare or it's going to be an epic, the obvious choice that everyone is doing, obviously, is going to be tank. Tank is goated. You get the tank. This might even be the single best first pick you could do in the game. In fact, I will argue it is. And you run right to the middle to get your tank. That is what you do. If tank is an option, pick, go middle, get into a tank. Enjoy that solid start, okay? From there, however, there are other epics, of course, I will pick if I'm given the option. One is going to be the Barb King, because he's the best epic in the game. Saying he's goated. I love him. And the Archer Queen, I will take, but she is a little bit of a liability. She will get low health and not have a way to recover it. So you're going to need to be extremely mindful of your Archer Queen. She is a vulnerability. You're going to need to push a lot of ranged units to follow on with that. But hey, starting a draft with either a BK and knowing you can go with a lot of physical damage dealers, like up-close hitters, or you can go with your ranged units if you get an Archer Queen off rip. Kind of cool to shape your whole draft, okay? Works nicely. The final one that I would say is a snap include at the start of a match. And I don't think this is even controversial. If you are given the option to take a Mortis, you take it. And the reason you take a Mortis at the start of the match is that he will grow your squad's appearance and effectiveness very quickly. You basically slay monsters and they become a meat shield for you, and that is really valuable. Not only will you visually be intimidating to an enemy who'll be like, nah, I'm not gonna try and fight you. You got a lot of stuff in that squad, but also he is providing like lots of things that get between you and your enemies, and that is extremely valuable. I think mid to late, he actually does not offer nearly as much value, but as a first pick, I would not hesitate to pick him. The other units that are here could be considered controversial, or people don't have enough experience to realize the downfalls of them. Like, for example, obviously everybody loves Hog Rider. I love Hog Rider, but as a first pick, I find it to be a little bit of a liability. Have to get a healer for that thing really quickly, or you're going to be in trouble. Even Max, I freaking love Max, right? But you can get into trouble with that. There are other choices, like you could justify going for Anita Okay, the bear's pretty tanky, right? But you could have a conversation about these. But the ones that are uncontroversial is tank, DK, Archer Queen, and I think the Mortis. The rest of these, you have a conversation about whether or not you think you'd go for them. I will argue that for a lot of these, I will just go for the Barb instead. And the thing that people are deeply underestimating is the value of being able to go for a fusion immediately and to keep your squad cost so low that your squad just gets stronger than everybody else's for the same amount of coins harvested, and hopefully you'll harvest more than other people. If you got value from this video, consider smashing the subscribe button. You can find me live streaming almost every day of the week, it seems, except on the weekends. So if you want to see these strategies in action, and I'll talk through my choices, check a card in the end screen for a most recent stream. Alternatively, if you want to see why the Barb is deeply underrated and understand how he actually works, check that video as well. It'll be on in just a second.